symposium that was held at Columbia University on Wednesday and Thursday, March 22nd and 23rd of 2006 at the beautiful Low Library Rotunda at Columbia University. The title of the seminar or symposium was The Prospects for Democracy, a Libyan-American Dialogue, and it was sponsored by the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University and the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C., and also the Al Fatah University that's in Tripoli, Libya, and the Green Book Center, also headquartered in Libya. 50-odd of academic and intellectuals were discussing the situation so far as Libya is concerned, and the overall conference did involve a video conference from Muammar Gaddafi, the leader of the country. A number of the intellectuals gathered, we did interviews with, and we'll present those now and hope you might enjoy the discussion of Libya, its role in the world, and the prospects for a better relationship between the two countries. Thank you very much for viewing. Welcome very much to this segment of the program where we're at the conference at Columbia University. This is March 21st of 2006 and is a link-up conference between Libya and the United States, the first in 25 years, a major event. And we're here with Richard Murphy, who needs no introduction at all. He's a very well-known figure in the world society, public intellectual of the highest order, a public servant, and welcome very much, and thank you for taking a little time to share with some of your thoughts.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure.
Okay, I wonder, this is a major, maybe you could share just briefly, a real quickly rundown. You were ambassador to Saudi Arabia?
I was in the career foreign service, and the last assignments I had were ambassador in Saudi Arabia, Philippines, Syria, Mauritania before that. Then I was in the Reagan administration. My farewell tour was assistant secretary for Near East and South Asia.
Yes.
And I've been with the Council on Foreign Relations for some 15 years after that. Now I'm an independent consultant.
You were now independent. This is being sponsored by an organization here in Columbia. It's the International...
it's the Columbia School of International and Public Affairs.
That's a major institution,
oh, yeah.
Is it not?
Oh, yes. It's been, it's about a 60-year-old institution.
60?
It's part of the Columbia family of schools.
60 years.
60 years.
Zero.
Yeah,
just getting started.
Well,
better than
that's like most of us, I suppose
yeah,
you
right,
could say.
Right,
60 years,
yeah, right. That's really good. But it's a major institution, and then also by the Fatah University in Libya, and also by the Green Book Center.
Green Book Center in Tripoli.
Yeah.
Well, Fatah University is Libya's oldest university. The Green Book Center is something that started by the Libyan leader, I think by Muammar Gaddafi, back in the 60s, no, back in the 70s. And it's a research center. It was at one point publishing a number of works analyzing his texts and how they would apply to various parts of the world.
I see, yeah. And you were ambassador for a number of years, I think 2 stints in Saudi Arabia, and you're very familiar with the Middle East. You've written well on Iran and the Middle East and so forth. And I understand you and your wife have just come back from a first trip to Libya, and I wonder if maybe you might want to just share.
Actually, I'd been there once in the 70s, just overnight, en route to Tunisia, and then I was back about 2 years ago when we were exploring the chances of a Libyan-American business council. That didn't develop. But we were out there together just 3 weeks ago, which was a fascinating trip because in addition to meetings with some of the government people, we were invited to make a tour in the south into the Sahara.
Yes, beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous country,
yeah,
gorgeous.
Yeah.
If you could see those dunes, you know, just hundreds of feet high and shaped by the wind like they'd been sculptured in the modern design. No, it is beautiful.
It's an element of tourism that might be very important for that country.
When they get some infrastructure developed for the tourists, it'll be a big draw. Because it's not only the natural beauties, they've got some fantastic Roman ruins. Leptis Magna, Sabrata on the coast.
Were you able to get to them? Aren't they something else?
They are.
It's beautiful, it's beautiful.
Well, you know, the marvel is they were excavated. These were structures from what, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century probably A.D.
think things go back to Periclean Greece over to the east. I mean,
Yeah.
they had Greek, they got a heck of a history.
But the Roman ruins, in my book, surpass anything I've seen in the Near East,
I
and
know.
there are some Italians who will admit it's better than anything they find in Rome today.
It's really something. It's important. Now, and the question of Libya, it's been there for a long time, the great events that are going on. Are you optimistic about how we can work something out? And have you studied his thinking at a political, we're here at a conference discussing democracy, a big theme in the world,
Yeah.
and also his third universal theory. They've got
Right.
a form of participatory democracy. And did you see the road signs that said partners, not wage earners,
Yes,
all over
yes.
Libya?
Well, that's been...
It seems to be committed into something like Louis Kelso's notions of share ownership being spread out, or could be seen that way, a different kind of economic. Is there something there that might be, some of the world could learn from, or what do you think?
He spelled this out in a very brief text that I gather he personally wrote from beginning to end in the early years of the 70s, and he called it the Green Book. It does deal with a tremendously wide range of topics in economics, politics, and I think people should look at it. It's a fast read. It's not a major thick volume. But to take a step back, we're having this conference at Columbia because relationship has started to normalize after a long years, 2.5 decades of sanctions imposed when the government of Libya was held responsible for sponsoring acts of terrorism around the world. And there was notably the trial in The Hague a few years ago, which did end in convicting one Libyan for Lockerbie, the Lockerbie bombing, Pan Am plane there. Well, at some point, I would say about 5 years ago, he decided that he wanted to bring Libya more into the mainstream than it had been. It had been very isolated, and economic sanctions were just part of it. And what he did were two remarkable developments. I mentioned Lockerbie. He made a settlement of claims while never admitting responsibility. He made a very generous settlement. And he decided to end Libya's program of weapons of mass destruction, and has invited international inspectors who have been in there steadily the last 3 years, I believe. And that is a remarkable act that he took, and one which I think we can all be happy to see as a great contribution to non-proliferation.
Amen. We might all take a lesson out of that book, because it's a mug's game when you get down to atomic weapons that can destroy the species. We got to deal with something in a new kind of way. You may have set a new pattern.
Well,
you understand?
I'd like to think he had set a new pattern. I haven't seen any followers.
I understand,
But, there are a few countries that had forsworn nuclear weapons, like Brazil, Argentina, I think. South Africa and even Egypt that had a program.
Not a small matter.
Not a small matter. They stopped, but Libya did have had imported a lot of equipment. And when he decided to end that program, he opened up the records, which helped us as Americans in terms of getting better insight into the international trafficking in nuclear technology. You've heard of A.Q. Khan in Pakistan, and Libya was one of the customers and clients for A.Q. Khan's technology.
He then would base his ability to have a say or influence in the world, perhaps, on his ideas that he seems to have a strong commitment to, and seeing in a revolutionary way, perhaps the way some people saw the United States of America in 1789 had an influence upon the dynastic states of Europe, that it held sway within an agent regime system of organization, that they brought something new that the zeitgeist required. I think he feels the zeitgeist requires something new beyond that, which we assume to be the basis of discussion themed terms like democracy and these ideas. And so he would be able to address the world as he's going to address this conference with these at the basis of the level of idea. And do you
Yes,
think there's something might be worth considering there?
Well, I think let's listen. That's on the second day of the conference, in the afternoon. There'll be a conversation with him. It's not going to be a speech by him. It's going to be a discussion of his ideas and questions posed to him by a few people who are here at the conference.
Yes, right. It's a major thing that there can be a reach out this way. One last thing, if I could. You've had a great deal of experience with and understanding Iran. You want to make some comments about the current state of affairs as far as we've got this new president and so forth? But I know you're a world-recognized authority and understanding.
Don't exaggerate.
Well, it's just understood by one and all.
I've learned enough about Iran to realize how little I understand Iran.
Well, that's the beginning of wisdom,
beginning,
I think.
They say.
But
look, one of the things that put us off at the beginning, and I was still in government then, was for a decade after the Iranian Revolution in '79, the Iranians preached a doctrine of looking around the Muslim world, the Islamic world, and saying everyone outside of Iran, every government outside of Iran that's a Muslim government is a corrupt, blasphemous type of government, and they all should be overthrown. They were very active in moving to do that. That claim, I don't say they don't believe in their ways. I'm not saying they've lost belief in their own ways, but they've become less, if you will, revolutionary in saying we have a message for the Islamic world, and they have largely stopped intelligence operations directed against other governments in the Islamic world.
Oh, interesting. Okay, okay, that's interesting.
So,
and that had been a real sore spot when
a real sore spot, because we in a number of countries had interest in the region, had certain relationships with governments in the region, and we were not amused at the Iranian message, we're going to destroy them all.
Yeah, that's got a kind of ring to it that's a little bit worrisome in these times.
Darn right, darn right. Well, and the worry today is what are they going to do with their nuclear program?
Yes, exactly.
There is a conviction in Washington, right or wrong, time will prove that the Iranians have a nuclear weapons program in mind. They have denied it. They've said they just want to be treated like other countries that want access to nuclear technology. And we've had trouble getting the message across, though these days we're working better with other countries to get the same message to Tehran, that the problem is nobody trusts you. Be they in Beijing, Moscow, London, Paris, United States, and we are convinced you have aggressive intentions in developing this program. We're convinced it's going to nuclear weapons. They've denied it, as I said. But basically, it's we just do not want to see those weapons in hands of a government that is as aggressive as Iran. So it's a tough one, because you've got a tough problem to handle, because in Iran, whether you like the regime or don't like that regime as an Iranian, you're very proud of a country coming into its own as a nuclear state.
And do you think they see this excursion into Iraq as a neo-colonial expression of Western colonial imposition upon the rest of the world that so many people thought we'd gotten away from following the Second War and the retreat from the colonial? It's a deep historical root of feeling objection to the colonialism that had characterized the last few hundred years of the development.
I suspect that there's some of that in the Iranian
we're not
thinking.
sensitive enough to that.
Well, one
as
thing
we might be, and if we're.
But they look at the map and they say, you know, let's not indulge in theorizing whether it's colonialism or not. You have got a nuclear power in Pakistan, a good friend of yours. You have taken over Afghanistan. You are putting military bases into Central Asia.
All the stars.
You have Israel. We are clearly the target, your target, to be your victims, and you're trying to squeeze us out of power and out of existence. You know, it's gotten very emotional.
Yeah, right. And that's part of the thing we ought to try, part of the dynamic we ought to try and understand, because it takes some cool heads at these times, because this is a critical time in terms of the development of affairs on the planet. And you've contributed mightily, if I may, to enlightening us all in terms of moderate and appropriate kind of patterns we could take. And I really congratulate you on having been involved in this effort. Is that with the Columbia Institute you were here, or are you on your own, or were you?
No,
are you a member of that?
No, I'm not a member. I'm not a
agency?
member of the sponsoring agency. I was approached to ask to help on. Well, one of the problems, of course, has been visas to bring Libyan participants over, and so I did a lot of work on that. We started trying to get visas back in early December. And these days, if you come from a state which is still on the list of states supporting terrorism, which Libya is, I hope it will not.
They still are. They
still are.
On that
yeah,
list,
despite the fact.
How many of them are there on that? Do you
No,
happen to know?
it's a handful now. It's Iran, Syria, Libya still. Although Libya, I think legally has made its case that it is not, should not be on that list.
They got an office now in Washington.
They have
a liaison
there's
office.
a liaison
They don't have an
office.
embassy
No,
yet.
there's no embassy.
Do you see that coming?
And we have, yes, I do.
Within the year, or what?
Well, I hope
saying?
so. I hope so. It'll depend, I think, on the judgment in the White House as to when is the best moment to bring this to the Congress.
And they've been very involved. Libya's been very involved with the African Union.
Yeah, very much.
It might be helpful in terms of a lot of the problems confronting Africa.
In the crisis in Darfur today, they've opened their ports to shipments of humanitarian goods across the land, the roads to from the Mediterranean down to Darfur. So, yeah, they are.
And
they deserve a second look, a new look.
As it would. It might be a lot of people are going to find that some of the things they're saying might make some sense in terms of a world that is, in a certain sense, looking for vision by which the world can come to live in a way. And this idea of participatory democracy, they have these people's congresses there where everybody, and then the idea that the assets of the corporation, they had it set up, as I understood, you're not supposed to hire anybody. But everybody who's part of an ongoing enterprise should be the owners of the capital asset base of it, which is sort of something that the world development of the economy is based upon. You know, it's like a new idea, but it's sort of like Louis Kelso's ESOPs that we tried to do here to get some ownership out. You know, I don't know. It's just a critique of the system that's been in place that we may be too committed to. Like the Ancien regime of Louis XVI was too committed to some ideas of feudalism that the zeitgeist requires something new. And he may have some cues that could ease us over into accepting some changes that are going on that we would do well to address. I don't know.
Well, we'll listen carefully. You've got a number of intellectuals from the universities of Libya here.
Yeah, at this conference.
And there'll be, I think, a good debate. So let's see what hopefully it'll produce.
Not the least of which, if I may, is yourself, sir.
Well,
and I thank you very much for helping to put this together, and we appreciate you very much having talked with us. And Richard Murphy, and we're at this conference again. Let's say it's the 22nd of March, 2006, and it's liaisoning between Libya and the United States of America. And we're going to hear by video conference from Muammar Gaddafi tomorrow at this conference, and it'll be interesting to see what he's got to say.
Absolutely.
It's sure been interesting hearing what you had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll be coming right back. Thank you. Welcome back to the program. We're here at the Columbia University on March 22nd of the year 2006 at a conference linking the country of Libya and scholars and intellectuals and people concerned with foreign affairs at Columbia University. And we have as a guest now David L. Mack. He's associated with the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. His origins are in Oregon, and he was, if I understand it right, you can set it straight, David, you were the ambassador in Libya at the time?
I was a young diplomat in Libya in 1969 when Muammar Gaddafi came to power, and I was the interpreter for the U.S. ambassador. So
wonderful.
I was in all the meetings.
You were there right at the ground floor, as it were, when the revolution took place September 1, 1969,
That's right.
And you were there on the scene. I wonder, maybe you could describe briefly, if you could just briefly, we only got about 10 minutes here with you, your credentials, your background. And then if you could tell us about that, and then what changes you see between when you were there on the spot when the revolution was made and now 2006.
Well, I'm a career Foreign Service officer, and I speak, read, and write Arabic, and as a result I was sent to Tripoli to be the interpreter for the U.S. ambassador, who was not an Arabic speaker. And
If you could just face this way a little bit. No, the camera, that's all.
okay.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
might, and since I was a very junior diplomat, they might have wanted to keep me out of all the meetings, but they had no choice since the meetings were conducted in Arabic.
And you had to do the interpretation.
And frankly, although many people in the U.S. government thought it was very strange that people in their 20s were taking over the government, since I was the same age, I didn't think it was particularly strange at all.
You would like to have done the same yourself, huh? Maybe. I understand, yeah. But it was an exciting moment then when that was going on, and you got your initial sensings of what was going on, and is it as you thought it was going to be from that time, as the revolution was happening, as it developed in the year, 2, 3 years out from that? Did you see any surprises, or did it follow along with what you expected? Or
I was there for 3 years, and I can say that it was a genuine revolution. This may have started out as a coup d'etat, but it dramatically changed the political landscape and eventually the economic and social system of Libya. Now, I returned last year after an absence of some 32 years.
Yes.
And the single biggest change that I found was the role of women in Libyan society. I can say without exaggeration that in the 3 years I was in Libya from 1969 to 1972, I did not meet a single Libyan woman.
Really?
And my wife, who even speaks some Arabic and is perfectly sociable kind of person, met very few, because essentially they stayed in the home, they socialized only in the extended family, the men did all the shopping. If a child got sick, a man would have to leave his job and go take the child to the doctor. You can imagine what this did to the efficiency of the Libyan economy. It greatly crippled their ability to take advantage of the oil wealth that was coming in.
Yeah.
Now that's changed. Libyan women are integrated in all aspects of the country. There are a number of Libyan women university professors at this conference, for example. And when I was back in Libya last April, I spoke at the university, audience of some 170 students and faculty members, and about half of them were women. And a number of them got up afterwards to ask me questions. They were assertive, they were self-confident.
Good.
And I think this is going to make a huge positive difference in Libya's future.
Yeah, you would have seen some big changes, because Libya, I think, in 1950 was just about the poorest country in the world before they discovered the oil.
Well, indeed it was.
And they had suffered terribly at the hands of Italian colonists, particularly half the population, I believe, had been almost ruthlessly decimated. So they'd had a hard road to go.
They had indeed.
Coming out of history.
But they did achieve their independence and eventually began to receive very considerable oil wealth. And I would say that very unfortunately, for most of this period, from 1969 until recent times, they did not make a good use of their economic potential. They had an excess of a socialist revolutionary zeal. They basically destroyed the private sector that was beginning to develop when I was there. And as a result, until the recent economic and political reforms that have taken place in Libya, they were isolated from the rest of the world. They were certainly not making good use of their potential.
They're making better use of it now.
Oh, absolutely.
As you were there, and as you look ahead.
Absolutely. Starting in about 1988, and then really getting underway in the late 90s, it's clear that Muammar Gaddafi, who remains the sort of leader of the Libyan revolution and controls almost all of the power in the country, starting in that period, he began to introduce some changes. He began to open up to the West. He made an important strategic decision that Libya needed to have good relations with Western Europe and with the United States. They got out of the business of supporting terrorism. They compensated the families of the Pan Am 103 victims, and they did away with their programs for weapons of mass destruction.
Not a small matter.
No, indeed. And this was a great strategic achievement for the United States. And I think...
And for Libya, perhaps.
I think so.
It's a mug's game, in a
well,
sense.
Libya went from being a target to being a partner with the United States in the war against terrorism. And as a result, I think they have a good potential for future economic development, as well as a more normal political relationship with the rest of the world.
I see. His ideas may be what he would be able to give to the world. We're going to hear from him today at a conference, and he's got ideas that he's contained in his green book, I presume you've read, and his universal theory.
Yes.
He's got this idea of participatory democracy with people's congresses.
Yes.
And he's got this idea, you see the road signs, I'm sure you did when you were there recently, partners, not wage earners, addressing the wage system and so forth. What do you think of his ideas,
Well, basically,
or him at the level of idea?
Basically, Harold, Gaddafi's theories and ideas are an amalgam of Arab tribal democracy, equality of all Muslims in their religious system, and some utopian socialist notions that I think he grafted onto that from various European theorists whose ideas came to him filtered through various personalities. In many respects, it's quite impractical, although in theory, it's very nice to think that the kind of participatory direct democracy you have in a New England town meeting could be replicated on a national level.
They've tried, I think.
I personally am very skeptical about this. And I'm calling on the Libyans at this conference to engage in a little bit of self-criticism, to be willing to ask tough questions about why, if they have such a perfect post-democratic system, it continues to be the case that health care in Libya is a scandal, that the education system is behind much of the world, and that in many respects they are not succeeding in transforming Libya's economic wealth into productive economic activity, making jobs for Libyans.
Well, he would take exception to the idea of jobs, which is the standard measurement by which economic theorizing has been set up.
No, not true, not true. I mean, he basically wants to see Libyans working and producing. What he has objected to is the employer-employee relationship,
Yeah, the
which he
owner
believes,
and the worker.
yeah, he believes is a form of slavery.
That's what the Marxists say too,
Yeah.
or a lot of the left-wing
Basically,
people have called that.
basically they, during the revolutionary period in that country, they sort of adopted some of the extreme socialist theories that said that profit-making was a form of theft, and that and they nationalized a lot of not only foreign companies but Libyan companies. They basically made it impossible for landlords to rent houses to people. One of the slogans of the revolution was that he who lives in a house owns the house,
or works the land.
and as you can imagine, this did not encourage the owners of houses to keep them up for their tenants.
That's interesting. I've been there about 8 times and everything, and I'm not sure. I see a pretty vibrant kind of situation. It seems to me, as I see it. But
Well,
that's a question.
I tell you, Harold, let me tell you what I'm comparing it with.
Yes, please.
When I left Libya in 1972,
yeah, all right.
its oil production was roughly that of the United Arab Emirates. But in addition, it had far more, despite the poor legacy of Italian colonialism, it had far more infrastructure in terms of roads, in terms of developed systems. It had a far greater, far larger educated population. Sheikh Zayed, who was the new ruler of the United Arab Emirates, actually came to Libya to get health care. Now Libyans go to Egypt and Tunisia to get health care. Now that tells you something about how this country has not made use of its potential.
Well, okay, that's the thing. They're coming from in one generation from having been literally, by the UN standards, the poorest people in the world. They've made considerable progress, I think, but that's another thing. But you say that the Libyans should be a little bit more self-critical. Do you think there's any part of the world that might be a little more self-critical about accepting the march of history?
Of course.
And the critique of the march of history, that there's a great deal of discontent now?
I'm going to start my presentation today
right.
at this conference
Right.
with some self-criticism.
Right.
And I'm going to say,
Right.
I mean, here's 2 points
Yeah.
upon which I am very critical of the practice of our indirect electoral democracy in the United States.
I see.
For example,
Right.
as a citizen of the District of Columbia,
Yeah.
I have no voting
Well, you have no vote
representative
at
in
all.
Congress.
Yeah, that's right. That's
The
right.
role of money in
Uh-huh.
U.S. elections has become
Scandalous.
really scandalous,
Yeah.
and that is diluting the franchise rights of the vast majority of American citizens.
Yeah.
I'm going to start off with that, and then I'm going to say I hope this encourages our Libyan friends
Right.
to
To be
engage
also,
in
yeah.
a little bit of self-criticism about the actual practice of their theoretical participatory direct democracy.
Fair enough. Good enough. I think that's the kind of that's a very good stance to take in terms of everybody. It's a time for everyone to test, in a certain sense, other ideas and their own thoughts and be self-critical, because this is a very crucial time
indeed.
in the evolution of universal affairs.
Okay.
And I really thank you.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
thank you.
we could have talked for hours,
Oh, I'm
but it's
totally
your pleasure to have had the
Okay.
his perceptions, and he was on the spot at the time of the revolution. He's got ideas, and I'm really looking forward to hearing those. You're going to be a speaker this
I
afternoon.
will be,
And we're
yes.
going to hear from Mr. Gaddafi himself tomorrow.
Right.
Via video conference. Your pleasure to have his perceptions. We invite you to stay tuned. There'll be more coming up again to remind you. The conference, March 22nd, 23rd at Columbia University, the year 2006, between Libya and the United States academic and socially concerned community. Thank you. We'll be coming right back. Once again, thank you really
Okay.
very much. We're here at the conference with Dr. Amar. He's in from Libya. He's a professor, as I understand, of law at the Fatah University in Tripoli, and we have some mutual friends that we know, Ali Traki and that sort of thing. And we're here, and welcome very much. I understand it's your first time in New York or in the United States?
Oh, thank you very much.
This is your first visit?
My first time to New York.
Welcome very,
And
very
US
much
as well.
indeed.
Yeah, thank you.
This is an important event that's going on here now, where there's a link being made between Libya and the United States, which is an appropriate and good thing and timely in terms of events as you see it. This seems to me a very good idea. I suppose it does to you as well.
Well, I think it's important and it's quick. It's quite good kickoff of the ball, which have been iced for years and years, and it's just the idea itself, and we can meet with the professionals from the Columbia University and the Americans as well,
Yes.
as us from Libya. This is, I think, the big thing that we achieved together.
Yeah, there are things to be taught both ways, I think. There's a great deal, if I may suggest, there's a great deal about what you're trying to do in Libya with the people's congresses and the idea of participatory democracy and so forth. There's a great deal that we might very well learn from your experience. It seems that way to me.
Yeah, that's. I think it's quite good to, as I said earlier, that first thing which really we happy to achieve is to meet together and sit together and discuss things together, and this is very good. Second thing that, well, for personally for myself, as a first time in New York and USA, even I've been about 12 years in the UK since my studies for law. I never come across and talk to the people from the United States as a hierarchy or professionals
Yes.
or professors. This is good. For the democracy and the symposium focusing on the prospects on democracy, so this is good for us to deliver what's going on in Libya, for the how the people can participate in democracy.
I think it's
Yeah.
good. People in New York may not realize you actually have these, it's like what we call town hall meetings. The people actually get together and they meet and they have attempting what is called like participatory
Yeah,
democracy. They actually participate.
it's simply, simply and basically is all the people are in charge for participating in public affairs by attending popular congresses, for which is in every town, and it's for everybody who's over 18, whether irrespective of the sex, which is that's basically that's the idea.
Well, that's a very good idea, and it's also so you got a meeting place where they can get together and actually
Yes, meeting
participate.
place, and these congresses is like the authority for them, and then they're passing the resolutions and decisions to the popular committees who
Yes.
are in charge for implementing what the people said.
Uh-huh.
That's basic.
I have had a chance to visit Tripoli on a number of occasions and been in Libya. It's a beautiful country, and I think, and you used to have little signs up that says partners, not wage earners, around the roadside. They had the partners, not wage earners, talking about economics, that in his green book, Colonel Gaddafi says, the people who are part of an organization economically should be the partners of that rather than just wage earners. That's another very important idea,
well,
is it not?
Well, it's as I said earlier, democracy has not one vision, has not one cube, has not one. It's like
model fit all.
Yes, it's a cultural matter. It's like for us, maybe I'm Muslim and you are Christian, and it is Jewish. We're all respecting one God and we're going one God, one different ways.
Yeah.
So we should respect other on that basis.
Yeah.
So the same for democracy. We view that democratization should be at the bottom of the level for the basic people.
For the people.
For the people all.
Yeah. And
the people with no representatives.
Yeah.
Because the representative at the end, for me as a person, only the rule what can I do in representative democracy is go to the ballot and the voting and put the paper, and that's it.
Yeah.
But I cannot being further to discuss laws and issues and things, and this is in basic congresses, popular congresses in Libya. I can discuss rather than just vote for somebody to discuss on behalf of me.
Yeah.
It's not.
That's
we
very
complete
important.
each other. We're not confronting each other.
That's right. No, you're just
simple as
participating.
that, yeah.
That's very good. It's like we used to call town meetings.
And then these people, they pass what they said to the popular committees, who they chosen by the people themselves to implement what they said.
I know, it's really unique
that's
and
all,
interesting.
that's all.
If people would think you have to have you have to have representative, you have participatory. Well, that's really interesting, and it's also, it has economics, the way you organize the economics there with people being participants or partners in an economic organization.
Well,
That's
either you be partner, or if you wish to be paid, you can pay.
all right. Well,
So, or you be partner for the products itself, what energy you put, power you put to product certain products.
Right.
You can have share of the profit, not only the wage, which is very little and low.
he
And
actually
if
says-
you wish to do the other ways, you can do that.
Right, okay,
So it's
that's
not
right.
just really expanding certain rights for employers
And these
workmen.
That's right. And these are big ideas, and he puts them in his green book. And this unit, is sponsored. This event at Columbia University is sponsored by Columbia, and then but also by the Fatah University and by the Green Book Center. And his green book is and universal theory.
Yeah, green book is not
things.
an innovation for somebody, but it's basically a conclusion for a human thought. That's all.
Yeah.
It's a conclusion.
Well,
That's all.
if I may, that's not just really all. It's a very important one. I think it should be read more and more here by people in the United States. I thank you. You could take a couple minutes out from the conference.
Oh,
it's
thank
a great
you very
pleasure.
much
And I would
thank
personally
you
like
for
to
the
extend
New York Columbia
welcome.
University, and I was really pleased. The people here are very nice, very friendly, very open-minded, and I really looking forward to come back to this country.
Good.
For a visit.
You can get out to other parts of the
Yes.
country. And so forth. You're from Tripoli then?
Yes, I'm from Tripoli. I'm teaching. I've taught the oil or petroleum law at the university, and now doing human rights and undergraduate level, and for the postgraduate doing humanitarian law, which focuses on Geneva Conventions and things.
Good. That needs to be focused on. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you very
participating.
much.
Welcome
Okay.
again to New York. Your pleasure to have his perception. We'll be coming back from the conference here. This is March 22nd of the year 2006 at what could very well be seen in the historical...
And there is lots of things to discuss here, not only democracy, but also there is the world order has got problems, there is human rights has got problems.
Are there a couple of problems
No,
out there?
I mean, there are
I'm
not
making a
problems
joke.
for
There are
us.
many
no,
problems.
no, there are lots of global problems.
Right,
and
yeah.
we share that as you the same, because we all belong to one globe and all of us are humans.
We're all in this
so
together.
we should share that.
We're all in this boat together.
Thank you.
Right,
Yes.
well. Thank you very much. So we'll
Okay.
be coming back again.
All right.
Thank you. We're at the conference. We'll remind you again on March 22nd and 23rd, commemorating the opening of relationships with Libya in a new kind of way here at Columbia University. And there's a number of scholars and people from Libya here. It's a very exciting conference. And one of the outstanding events was a panel this morning that included our guest, our current guest, Professor Turkaya Atov.
Yes.
He's an international relations professor. He's knowledgeable about Libya, and he's written, as he's just told me, something on the order of 132 books.
Wow.
You've been busy at the computer, young man.
Yes.
That's marvelous. Congratulations. You had very good things to say, among them saying you're a study of history, Charles Baird and so forth. You're coming to read some people more than, with respect, more than you did in the past, perhaps one Howard Zinn and so forth. You're a student of history, and you view Libya through a very scholarly understanding of history. But maybe you could just address that. We only have about 10 minutes, but your view of history, and where does Muammar Gaddafi and the country of Libya possibly fit in terms of the evolution of historical thought and the evolution of social, political, economic organization of the planet?
Mm-hmm. Well, I teach international relations, and history is one of the side disciplines that help us to understand what's going on right now. Of course, the person that you mentioned is the leader in North Africa who came to power in 1969.
Correct.
And he's been there since then. Of course, many things took place in that country. There have been changes, radical changes, and now we are witnessing another kind of change. Of course, the man is a revolutionary, and I think he represents some of the ideas of the levelers and French Jacobins and some of the modern thoughts, perhaps particular also to the continent of Africa. He is a man, basically, who tries to look at human relations from the angle of equality. And of course, he made some enemies. There's no doubt about that. But there might have been some cases where he might have overdone certain things, perhaps, and insisted upon certain directions. But now he has taken a different route. And I'm not trying to evaluate what was right and what was wrong. Only I will say that he also introduced what he called the third world or universal theory.
Yes.
And he rejected some of the worst aspects of capitalism and also some of the worst aspects of which I would prefer to call the Stalinist model in the Soviet Union, and also the model that was copied all over Eastern Europe. And I also think that these two models should be criticized.
Yes, I see.
Now, just a note of approval about this conference is that everybody is saying whatever they want to say.
Yes.
And there is a tolerance, and we are listening to each other, and we don't necessarily agree with everything that was said. It's a good thing that that we have the freedom to express our ideas. One thing that attracted my attention, especially after the second panel, is that some of the speakers said that, of course, the discussion of this point will get us into many issues that need to be dealt with in a deeper way. Well, let's deal with them in a deeper way.
Yes,
That's why we are here.
Yeah, right.
For instance, I didn't have the chance to ask a question to the lady speaker, an American. the following question, actually. Is it possible that private property, which she was referring to as a basis of democracy, and an economic growth which necessarily comes with it, is it possible that these things may develop, especially with the help of advancing technology and industrialization, into a monopolistic stage, and thereby causing the great majority, especially in the periphery, not only within the national frontiers, but especially in the third world, causing the majority to become more and more exploited and facing poverty. Now, if this is a possibility, then we are coming nearer to the core of the question.
I see.
That I would have liked to hear her, and also the opinion of all the other colleagues who spoke there, and they would have probably had said, well, of course, then I would have asked the second question, would you say that such societies exist now today? Of course, mathematically, this has been, I mean, I did not just say, well, I said about 100,000 years. Well, somebody, somebody worked this out. It's really like that.
Yeah, really.
It says that.
Do you think
the difference is such that, but of course, it's absurd, because some people are dying because of this.
I know.
And some people are losing their health, and some people are not getting enough education.
That's right.
And some people are just enjoying their life, and while the rest are fighting in battles and consecutive wars and getting shot and
Like
there,
so
and so on and so forth.
So much of James Joyce had Dedalus say,
Yes.
history is a nightmare
Yes.
from which I'm attempting to awaken.
Yeah.
Do you think his thinking might be able to awaken us to what the zeitgeist requires, a new view of things that is required,
Definitely,
or
but there's
maybe even allows us now, if we are to avoid some sort of a catastrophic destruction of the species with the technological weapons of destruction that we know now
There's
exist,
no doubt
that making it an existential
there's no
challenge
doubt
of a new order.
that we need that.
Something
but
new.
can we get this message to the people?
Yeah.
What shall we do?
Uh-huh. Well, he claims that people should have some ownership of the capital assets creating wealth. He has these signs all over Libya. You've been there, say, partners, not wage earners. And he critiques the wage system, or the labor theory of value, which informs most all economic theory, doesn't it?
Yes, but you see, there are so many unemployed, and there are so many machines that are not working.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with the system.
Are you optimistic, pessimistic for the human?
Well, I'm always optimistic, because I believe in the creativity of the human being. I'm sure that in the final analysis, they'll find a way. I will find a way. That's why we are here, for instance.
I think it is.
This
conference could help. This conference could help, maybe.
Could
bridge
help
things.
But if it's properly channelized, and if there are more television stations that will allow us to speak our mind.
We're trying to do our little bit here, sir.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
And I know.
And we'll get this out.
Yeah.
And I think, if I may, the trouble is we don't have, I really thank you for your participation in that panel this morning. It was very interesting. You've come to like Howard Zinn, apparently.
Yes,
reading
I
over
do, very much.
history.
And people like him.
And Beard, Charles Beard.
Charles Beard, of course. Not
interpretation.
only that, you remember, I can't remember the name of the person who wrote We the People. It's
Thomas Jefferson, perhaps?
No. he did his best in his, although he was
Yeah.
a slave owner himself,
Yeah, I know.
but he did his best, and the farmer from Virginia joined hands eventually with the merchant from New York,
Boston,
Hamilton.
Yeah,
Hamilton.
right.
And basically, they, in the final analysis, they acted in the same way. But he was much better than the rest.
But I'm wondering, if I could, I'm wondering, we had the Scottish Enlightenment, Hume and that, and there were a lot of, the United States of America made a revolution in 1776, and that revolution came to inform Les Miserables of France.
Yeah.
There was something in the zeitgeist, an industrial development that was coming, and the feudal order that had held for 800 years, and by which people got a sense of identity, was challenged in the French Revolution.
Yeah.
Do you think, and we called that system the Ancien regime.
The
That is,
Ancien
they've been in
regime.
place forever, and
Yeah.
they were just assumed to be legitimate. Do you think there's any way in which the system by which Spaceship Earth, or the planet, is being operated now, led by the United States, International Monetary Fund, and the implications, is outdated in terms of what the historical future either allows or requires in terms of a new liberating order that is not able to be seen, and that the legitimacy of the assumed legitimacy of the people of the assumed to be the legitimate order is going to be challenged in the same way that feudalism was challenged by the American example in 1776, that there may be a challenge coming to the assumed legitimacy of the international order that is not serving well enough the mass of the people of the world. And one place where that might
The
come
challenge
from is
is
Libya.
already there.
Yeah.
See,
But is Libya perhaps a model?
Fukuyama, well,
You understand
Libya
what I'm
can be
saying?
the model. The Fukuyama has said this is the end of history.
Yeah, at the end of
It's
history,
not.
and
It's
the
not
last-
the end of history.
Mm.
And, well, we can't shut them out up, and they can say anything they want. But their time is over, actually. And we have to search the Fukuyamas,
The new
Fukuyaman neocons. Yes,
we can retake that.
they can't provide anything new.
Do we need some new vision on this planet that is emerging, and is the kernel of some of a new vision one that might be coming out of the third universal
Well, it
system
needs,
that Mr. Gaddafi and Libya brought
It
from
needs more
humble background?
universal support.
it
On
worthy of
one
support?
man can't do it.
No.
And this is one reason why we're here. More and more Americans, I mean, if you can explain it to the Americans, for instance, the Americans are very creative people. And if they understand the legitimacy, the righteousness of a certain action, they can be more energetic than others.
Well, this might be a source of some vision.
Yeah.
Could inform
And
the population.
Yeah, but I think precautions are taken in order to prevent them to do that.
I think so. Usually the old order does. set
Yeah,
out
they
guides.
are afraid. I mean, it was even during the revolutionary period, it was like that. I mean, the people had certain energy and the certain ideas, and there were certain things that they didn't like. And let me say that the founding fathers, or the framers, some people call them, they wanted to channelize their energy into a struggle against England.
Yes.
And put a stop there. And they have been successful in doing that. But actually what they wanted was, I think, not only to get rid of England, but also to get rid of the things that they didn't like among their own rulers.
The old feudal order.
The order, yes.
800 years.
Yeah,
Or
and,
even history,
yes,
even the
they
inequities that have been part of
They
history
came
throughout all
yeah,
of history.
yeah.
could
They
be
came.
addressed.
They came to this country, for instance, in order to, because they wanted to get rid of poverty, repression,
Not a bad idea.
not a bad idea,
Yeah.
overlordism by others, and so on.
Right.
It was not the same kind of repression, but a different kind.
Yeah.
And why should they have it?
Yeah. Well, these are
it's
very...
better to avoid. It's better to avoid. But they had some energy, And they, the founding fathers, let's say, they were successful in uniting the nation against England and undermining the differences between, let's say, farmer and city dweller and freeman and Negro and so on, tenant and so on, and poor and rich, and trying to unite them in front of England.
Yeah.
Of course, that was also worth doing.
Yeah.
But
So we're living
they
in
had to get rid of something else.
Yeah, now we have
for the
to,
better of everyone.
but do we have to get rid of something else now, collectively as a human society, and we need a vision of an altered system than the one that's been in place for 229 years, and that it's outdated in its institutions, and there's a source of inspiration
But
from someplace new. And is Libya possibly a vision that has relevancy to what the planet either needs or requires?
Libya is a reminder. This country has in its history enough struggles.
They've had a terrible hard go of it.
Yeah, and they have struggled all the way through. I mean, I've seen, if you read and if you write American history from the point of view of the people, when you have
like
a different
Howard Zinn.
Yeah, like Howard Zinn, for
Somebody should write
instance, then you know that these people did not accept everything that was given to them.
That's right.
They struggled against it, and they were right. They were righteous. I mean, who is more Christian, the rulers or the ruled?
Yeah,
the
and
ruled. There's another
Gaddafi
one.
is in the camp
What
that
is he
Howard
doing?
Zinn is also in.
Yes,
I
they are
think,
in
for
the same
people.
camp. Yes,
Sure, for the
sure,
family. And that's
sure.
not a bad
I'm
camp
also,
to be in. Yeah.
I'm also in the same camp.
Right, okay.
And I have never met Howard Zinn.
Oh, he's a great guy.
Yes.
Really great sense of humor.
Yes.
Right, yeah, really
Yes,
good
I've
guy.
never met him, but I like him very
Yeah,
much
he's
because
really
I share
You
his
met Mr.
ideas.
Chomsky? Have you met Noam Chomsky?
No, never.
He's another
Well,
great,
that's the
intellectual.
trouble with us. I mean, some people don't let us come together.
Oh, okay. Listen, we let you come. This conference is here, and I really thank you for your participation. And it's really, I think, maybe a historical meeting of things and everything. And I really thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's your pleasure. Now, you're going to have to help me out here on the pronunciation again. It's Dr.
Türkaya Ataev.
You say it far better than I
Yes.
do. He's a student, and he's got a Turkish background. He could go on. He's written 132 books, ladies and gentlemen. Count them. He's running. You're coming up against the record, I think, that was set by Isaac Asimov. He wrote 500 out of it. But anyway, your pleasure to have had his perception.